Welcome to the fourth in a series of 4 COVID-19 recovery modules. This multi-module series will expand our existing COVID-19 toolkit available on the websites maintained by the Leading Ed Partnerships and the Illinois State University Center for the Study of Education Policy. This content is being recorded so that our lead project enrolled principals and principal coaches may access it on demand at a time convenient to them. The content has been open sourced so that school leaders everywhere may benefit. If you're working in or on behalf of a school, you know that there are many things being contested in the education space. A simple stock taking of the current context generates a list that includes masking or no masking, improving the quality of masks, the Omicron spike, the logistical burden of test to return, contact tracing, quarantining, and social distancing requirements, impatient parents, unreasonable demands, the absence of logic. The list goes on, and we can expect continuing or new distractions for the foreseeable future. Given this, you may think it's foolish to even think about planning for extended day or summer school. After all, why would you put already exhausted teachers in the position of working harder and longer, especially in the current socio-political climate? You might even ask, why is it that people are pretending that things are normal when they are anything but? What we're trying to do in this module is center the needs of children. Our ability to get through this period of low trust, high conflict is only possible if we do so. What we encourage you to do is to maximize existing instructional minutes and out of school time to increase opportunities for learning and to place the needs of children at the center of every decision you make. According to an educator's oral history of the pandemic year 3, compiled by the Heckinger Report journalism team, if you thought educators were exhausted from the 2 previous years that required major pivots, adaptation, and lots of loss, not just of learning, but of family and community life as we've come to know it, they warned us to brace for the school year 21-22. Stephen Weber, Associate Superintendent for Teaching and Learning for the Fayetteville, North Carolina Public Schools, observed that we're seeing some issues with student engagement, and we're also seeing some issues with students just having the stamina to make it through a whole day of school, to make it through 5 days of school in a row. And teachers and principals across the United States are also very tired. We don't talk about it very often because the parents are our customers, and we don't want to sound like we're complaining or whining or that, hey, we've got it rough. We know that several of our families lost jobs, so it's hard on everyone. But I'm seeing teachers saying it feels like the end of the school year tired. A lot of people don't talk about that because we realize this is the only 3rd grade experience this student will ever have. So we're trying to do our best to give them the best 3rd grade experience that it is possible to provide. There's real pressure to recoup or recover what now exceeds more than 20 months of learning, but the physical and emotional reserves of teachers and administrators are at an all-time low. Many adults are physically and emotionally spent. It can be helpful to name the type of fatigue because the behavioral impact may vary. For different people, different types of fatigue can trigger different types and intensities of responses. Crisis fatigue can be thought of as stress on the mind and body brought about by unexpected, unpredictable, prolonged, or difficult events such as war, economic depression, or a pandemic. Decision fatigue is a state of depleted will that results from having invested precious time and energy into making seemingly endless choices. It can lead to reduced effort in future decision making so that either decisions are deferred, avoided, or made hastily or superficially. Finally, compassion fatigue is the cumulative effect of stress resulting from caring for or responding to the needs of traumatized or suffering individuals. As a principal, You may see yourself in one or more of these states. Please see the resource section that accompanies this module for additional information and strategies for coping with these ever-present, energy-depleting forms of fatigue. In this module, participants will receive guidance, resources, and strategies to situate our understanding of learning renewal within the unpredictable and prolonged crisis, utilize ESSER funds for effective creation and targeting of after-school and summer school programming, will identify the elements of a highly effective high-dosage tutoring program that extends learning time during the school day. We'll look at ways to creatively schedule to continue learning during school vacations, holidays, weekends, non-student attendance days, and other school breaks, and will help you to maximize the homeschool connection. The COVID recovery phase toolkit module 4 is aligned to the ISB strategic plan priorities to support schools to create safe and healthy learning environments, to support schools to address the social and emotional needs of students and educators, and to support schools to adopt and implement inclusive policies and practices. The COVID recovery phase module 4 is aligned, as you can see, to goal 2, learning conditions, student well-being, and extending support to schools to address the social and emotional needs of students, educators, and staff impacted by COVID-19. The Module 4 toolkit is also aligned to recommendations brought forth by the Illinois P20 Council, and they have recommended that we provide students with resources and programs for academic support, such as enrichment opportunities, tutoring programs, youth leadership and development. You'll hear quite a bit about the tutoring model that we have to offer. And then ensuring more time for students' academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs by looking at strategies such as extended planning time for teachers, extending the school day and year, and transitioning even to year-round schooling. Finally, you may soon hear about communities of practice forming as districts and schools consider new ways of managing the finite organizational resource of time to extend learning. The P20 Council may designate council members to serve as working group chairpersons. Working groups can invite organizations and individuals representing pre-K through 20 interests to participate in discussions, data collection, and dissemination. And now, let's meet our facilitators. Derek Carr is currently the Director of Professional Development for ROE 28, representing Bureau, Henry, and Stark counties. She's a former middle and high school English teacher who's a well-known state expert in continuous school improvement planning. Dara is an ROE capacity builder who's been working with ISB to create materials and processes that provide concrete ways for districts to consider the adoption and implementation of the Illinois Priority Learning Standards. If her voice sounds familiar, it may be that you've heard her give presentations recorded and posted to the Learning Standards page hosted by ISB. Alicia Haller is the Executive Co-Director of the LEAD projects, a role she shares with Dr. Erica Hunt. In her role, Alicia oversees a massive multi-year formal research study funded by the U.S. Department of Education involving approximately 140 schools in more than 50 districts across the state of Illinois, located in RO regions 1, 17, 19, and 28, as well as a cohort of school affiliates of the Greeley Center for Catholic Education at Loyola University. She has extensive experience in principal preparation and development and leadership coaching, and is a well-known thought expert in these areas in the state of Illinois and nationally. Dr. Allison Slade, excuse me, has served as a teacher, professional developer, consultant, and educational leader in the city of Chicago and in the suburbs. After founding Namaste Charter School, she served as a principal for more than 14 years. She presently works as a consultant for the Chicago Public Education Fund, as a principal coach for the school leaders serving as professional learning community leaders across the city. Allison teaches at Roosevelt University in a teacher preparation program for bilingual education and was recently elected to serve on her local school board. The voice that you have been hearing moderate this module at this point is that of Linda Shea. Linda is the professional learning designer for the Leading Ed Partnerships team at Illinois State University Center for the Study of Education Policy. And we'd like to extend our special thanks to Lisa Skelly, research specialist for the Illinois Center for the Study of Education Policy, who verified our policy connections with ISB and the P20 Council, provided expert feedback on our content, and who is our Zoom navigator for this module. This module, of course, is focused on extended time for learning. And as we've already stated, we recognize and acknowledge the significant challenges that principals are facing as they lead their schools and communities through this prolonged and unpredictable crisis. In this module, we'll introduce some new ways to think about extending time for learning, whether that happens during the school day or beyond it. And for this section, we'd like to welcome Allison Slade Rothstein. Allison, welcome.
Thank you, Linda. School leaders and teachers are constantly trying to extend time, wrangle time, squeeze more time, but all too often, the traditions and truism about how schools should use time turn out to be as upside down as a tea party in Wonderland. In part because schools were originally designed on factory models of efficient time use, with academic credit measured in part through set seat time, education on the whole has equated more academic time with more learning. This is true, but depends on how you measure it. The time students are engaged in learning tasks is associated with higher academic achievement, but it is not endless, and simply adding more and more can have small and even diminishing returns over time. Emerging research is highlighting some perhaps surprising way that educators can rethink how they use time to support student learning. Regardless of how we think about it, time is a finite resource, and there will never be enough of it, especially in schools. There are always items that remain on the to-do list for our staff and our school leaders. This problem of insufficient time for learning is not a new problem. There has always been too little time available within the academic calendar to fully address the robust standards for academic achievement and social emotional learning. This issue has been exacerbated during the pandemic period due to the disruptions to learning that teachers and students have bravely faced. Therefore, it is even more important than ever that we moved past this mindset-based barrier and find ways to extend the time available for learning both inside and beyond the school day for all students, as all students have been impacted by the pandemic. As we've discussed, there is never enough time. So what we are encouraging and providing resources on in this session is maximizing learning time from all angles. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of acknowledgement and hope centered around the realization that issues of equity permeated public education from top to bottom, and changes were needed. As we enter the third year impacted by COVID, we need to focus our efforts on ameliorating these equity issues. These are changes that we hope will live well beyond the pandemic. The school day has been filled with new requirements and in many instances has actually gotten shorter, even during the pre-pandemic period. The pandemic only exacerbated these issues with the need for more time to be spent on transition, cleaning, and safety. A renewed focus as we enter a period where we are not only surviving, but we learn to thrive through and beyond this pandemic is critical for student growth and achievement at all levels. The next slide highlights a quote from a teacher taken just after the onset of the pandemic. It states, We should encourage and empower schools to experiment with extended and alternative learning schedules. But we should be equally, if not more, focused on how well existing instructional time is being used. Mr. Kraft indicates what we all know to be true in most schools and classrooms. Finding ways to innovate in classroom structure and scheduling needs to happen at a local level based on individual school based factors. Not everything will work for everyone, but empowering schools, leaders, and educators with the tools to make changes that center the needs of students is the key to strong utilization of time, both during and beyond the school day bell. Our webinar today is broken up into several parts that will address extended learning time. First, by looking at ways to create in-school time optimization through tutoring and acceleration, and then by looking at ways to extend traditional thinking of what embodies a day of learning, and looking creatively at before and after school, summer school, weekends, days off, and creating strong and sustaining homeschool connections. Our first new learning section will focus on maximizing learning time during the school day by utilizing research-based models for tutoring during the school day. Typically, we think of tutoring as an after-school activity, typically accessed by those who can afford additional investments in specific subject-based extra practice. However, there is extensive research on a new tutoring model known as high dosage tutoring, which has been shown to impact positively student achievement growth in both reading and math, and creates accessible models of tutoring for all by integrating this tutoring into the school day. There has been extensive research on these tutoring models, both in and out of school time. Some of the most salient impacts that are statistically significant are listed here. These include positive effects for both reading and math in the area of 3 to 15 months of accelerated achievement, other positive spillover effects, such as increased attendance and engagement. And although this is an expensive intervention, it can be one of the most cost-effective if it's implemented correctly. It highlights some of the features noted in the research of effective tutoring programs. Not all tutoring is created equal. Research indicates the features schools and leaders should invest in when creating a tutoring model. These include 3 or more sessions per week, a focus on cultivating tutor-student relationships, the use of formative assessments to monitor student learning, alignment with the school-based curriculum, and extensive formalized tutor training and support. The term high dosage tutoring is important to define first. Here is a visual which depicts how the different elements of tutoring impact student growth. Tutoring is a form of teaching, one-on-one or in a small group, towards a specific goal. High impact tutoring leads to substantial learning gains for students by supplementing, but not replacing students' classroom learning experiences. High impact tutoring responds to individual needs and complements students' existing curriculum. Other personalized learning options exist and may promote student learning by replacing traditional class periods, but we do not include them all under our umbrella definition of tutoring. For example, at this point, we are not focused on initiatives such as pull-out services, in-class small group instruction by a second teacher, or learning pods. We recognize high impact tutoring programs as those that either have directly demonstrated significant gains in student learning through state-of-the-art research studies, or have these characteristics that have proven to accelerate student learning. These characteristics of high impact tutoring programs currently include substantial time each week spent in required tutoring, sustained and strong relationships between students and their tutors, close monitoring of student knowledge and skills, alignment with school curriculum, and oversight and training of tutors to assure quality interactions. You can find more information on these research-based principles at the website listed at the bottom of this slide. As a reminder, tutoring is meant to supplement, not supplant, student learning. We want to remind you that not all tutoring is equitable or effective. Ensuring that tutoring is supplementing, not supplanting learning is critical. When scheduling tutoring, it is important to keep these tenets listed here at the forefront. Tutoring should occur during the regular school day, should be about 30 minutes long, at least 3 times per week, with a consistent tutor if possible. The schedule and location should be regular and consistent for students. As a reminder, Governor Pritzker implemented the right to play last year, and therefore we should avoid selecting and tutoring students during recess, specials, or tier 1 instruction. Good times for tutoring include independent work time, centers, and small group learning time. Tutoring should scaffold current grade level instruction for students and not be remedial. The ideal length of tutoring for most students is approximately 50 hours. We've already acknowledged the extensive decisions that are confronting school leaders today. However, it is critical to effectively use ESSER funds wisely and not just choose the most popular or well-known curriculum specifically for tutoring programs. Choosing a tutoring program is similar to selecting curriculum. Make sure you have a process and that you look beneath the surface to ensure that your path will actually lead to the results you are seeking to have an effective overall program. Thinking about the process that you will use and examining your choices rather than just choosing the most popular or the most best sold curriculum is critical. Making sure that you are articulating your needs and assessing the alignment of these needs to the partner or curricular choices capacity to meet those needs, rather than buying what's popular, is really important. Don't be misled in the marketing strategies being used, and ensure you use a cost-benefit analysis when selecting materials to avoid buying your way out of a crisis. An example of this is with the school district who purchased a popular reading curriculum, only to find out that the training only ended up being 159 asynchronous videos that didn't match the needs of the children or the teachers being served. In our accompanying resource document, the vendor tool that we have articulated helps schools effectively select resources that could impact your students and align most specifically with the curriculum in your school. Don't forget, making a curricular choice is the first step. But as you will see on the next slide, after you have set up the tutoring model, it is critical to ensure that you are making good use of your implementation time. Creating and implementing a monitoring plan to follow and identify strengths, weaknesses, and the overall effectiveness of the tutoring program is critical to making necessary changes and facilitating success. Next, I'm going to hand it back to Dara to discuss our next section, Beyond the School Day Learning.
Very good. Children spend approximately 20% of their waking hours in school, and policy leaders are often striving to provide more learning opportunities through before and after school programs. Schools can take advantage of extended day programs to help address the learning gaps brought on by the pandemic. Time, both before and after school, provides opportunities for extended learning. Academics, attendance, and social and emotional learning have all been impacted by the COVID pandemic. And research shows that extended day programs can help improve these three areas of concern. After-school programming has been shown to improve social and academic outcomes for students. However, research points to certain key elements for success. To fully realize all the positives of an after-school programming, students must receive a regular dosage from adequately trained staff using high-quality programming that matches specific school and district needs. Avoid limiting extended day programs to just your struggling students. All students can benefit from extended day learning opportunities. To staff these extended day programs, think creatively about utilizing the entire school staff. Instead, extended day staff may include instructional assistants, special education teachers, case managers, lunch aides, food service, and others who are already recognized as important members of the school community. It's important to try to involve the entire school team. During the pandemic, teachers have learned to deliver learning opportunities in multiple settings. Beyond the Bell learning experience should be reimagined learning for both in-person and remote delivery. Take pandemic lessons learned and transform these lessons into a variety of learning opportunities that meet the needs of both staff, students, and families. Be creative and learn from many who have already reimagined learning opportunities for us. For example, MIT's tutoring program taught college students how to grant seek to fund the program. They used a useful exercise to truly understand the school context, and college students directly did teach-at-home programs using hands-on kits for students. The Homeschool Connection currently is another example. Currently, there are several club memberships that mail learning activities to students to complete. Can schools extend student learning by sending extension activities and materials home with students to complete, much like these programs? For example, maybe create a STEM club membership and send home STEM activities for the students. It doesn't always have to be elaborate. We know that parents spend a lot of time helping with schoolwork during the pandemic shutdowns. While some of the homework may have been too difficult, parents did recognize that reading at home was one simple way that they could extend learning. We could help our parents by providing materials that could promote reading at home. We could create lending libraries with materials for elementary students. For older students, we could create kits that apply personal experience to text. We could include Mad Libs, Sudoku puzzles, Magic Tree House activities. We recently heard of one school who transformed an obsolete vending machine into a book machine. The vending machine was filled with books, and the school handed out tokens that allowed students to go to the machine, select, and acquire books for home. These machines are very similar to little libraries that are popping up everywhere. These little libraries allow students to leave a book and take a book. Skills that students have learned during the pandemic open up so many new possibilities for extended day learning. Library visits, take-home kits, and in addition to magazine subscriptions, or all extended learning opportunities for our students. Since 2004, the After School Alliance has provided the most comprehensive national and state-specific account of how children and youth spend their after-school hours. In the 2020 American After 3 p.m. report, one of the biggest takeaways is the continued demand for after-school programs. According to this research, for every child enrolled in school, for every child enrolled in an after-school program, 3 are waiting to get in. That equates to roughly 25 million children who are unable to access after-school programs. In the America After 3 p.m. research, core findings included after-school programs have kept kids safe, inspired them to learn, and have helped working families. Yet the unmet demand for these programs has skyrocketed. The current pandemic has identified the need for extended learning opportunities in all communities. Yet, there are barriers that keep us from accessing these opportunities. While the need for extended learning programs is high, the America After 3 p.m. core findings of 2020 reported that many barriers exist to utilizing programs already in place. 57% of parents reported programs were too expensive. 53% reported there was no safe way for students to get to and from a program. We need to create extended learning opportunities that provide universal access. Using current grant funds can help make programs affordable to all. Providing more remote options for students can help remove the transportation barrier. The research clearly supports extended day programs for students. We must go above and beyond to help serve every student. Create programs that do not require kids to qualify for the program in order to access it. Offer extended program invitations to everyone. With current grant funds, funding is and should not be a barrier to not serve all students. Try to create a program that includes everyone. And while we think about this, it's important to make the programs that we offer at these programs accessible to all. Communities have a serious stake in successful after-school programs. They help to reduce crime and other problems that arise when youth are unsupervised. They help to ensure young people become responsible, contributing members of society. Many community organizations will be responsive and helpful when they are made aware of the overall impact good after-school programs can have. Community partnerships can provide resources that would otherwise be too expensive, such as extra space and materials. However, when including community partnerships, there are some promising practices to consider. The promising practices for partnering with after-school providers are divided into 4 categories. They include program planning and evaluation, developing and sustaining these partnerships, staffing, and training for all. Faith-based communities can also be a source of volunteers and support. We need to be creative and think of all of the possibilities. A caring closet is one example of a community-based partnership. A caring closet is stocked with non-perishable food items and hygiene products that are located so that school students and families can access. A caring closet is just one example of how when we build community partnerships, we can go beyond academic needs of our students and also focus on basic needs. We need to be creative and use all of our community resources to help build the best after-school program. I'm going to turn it over to Allison, who's going to talk a little bit about looking at our calendars.
The same rationale that Dara just discussed that underlies growing and continuing after-school programs applies to broadening our idea of what constitutes a school day. Ask yourself, what are students doing during school breaks and days off? Some examples are listed on this slide. Ask yourself, what does your community need? What do the most marginalized students in your community need during holiday breaks or calendar days off that aren't necessarily observed by everyone in your community? Being creative about using these times staffed with individuals other than teachers could be a solution to making each of these days a learning day. Thinking about how to use these days as extending learning time, have some ideas here on this slide. By utilizing these days as learning days, students maintain a predictable schedule and less return to learn drag happens after vacations or long weekends. For these days, students and schools can maintain larger class sizes for these programs to accommodate more students and have a larger adult student ratio because of the kinds of programs that they are engaged in. Can you utilize partners to offer enrichment opportunities? Some ideas are listed on this slide, like using the 4-H Club, the YMCA, or other examples of community partnerships that Dara discussed earlier. Could you have an open gym? Could you have a volunteer program run by a corporation that maybe has the day off of work, such as a bank, that are closed on particular days? Could you invite employees to bring their own kids to volunteer? Thinking about how to creatively use every single day as a learning day is also critical to extending all of our learning time. Lastly, extending school hours or after school care hours so that transportation is not needed and parents can pick up after work hours is critical, especially as we look at bus driver shortages and shortages for other school-based workers. Thinking about how to potentially employ parents to supervise after-school programming. Thinking about options with late start and early dismissal, or how schools and districts might structure community partnerships to support these students while teachers participate in professional learning. Moving community organizations out of brick and mortar and back into the school is another option to consider. How you convey that you are not losing days off, summer vacation, or other days is critical to ensuring that the benefits of implementing year-round calendar or an extended calendar is critical for all students. Thinking about flex time in learning, where students can select where they go, could be another idea for ensuring that we are using all of our options when we creatively calendar our school year. This is another potential use of ESSER funds to reduce the number of preps and arrange for teachers to spend time in a math, reading, or science lab so that every period there is additional academic support before, after, and during school, and also on these days off. Getting and using feedback from families on what they need and the community on what they can supply goes hand in hand with these recommendations. Now we will move to look at additional extended year programming, including summer school, and I will pass it off to Linda Shea.
Thank you, Allison. The most effective extended learning time programs adopt academic content well aligned to the standards and instruction that would occur during the regular school day and include options for individualized instruction. Extended learning time programs that offer 44 to 100 hours of additional instruction tend to have a positive impact on student learning. So in this section of the webinar, we'll consider extended learning time programs for summer. When learning continues throughout the summer, students are healthier, safer, and better prepared for the subsequent school year. One valuable resource to consult in planning your summer's learning opportunities is the National Summer Learning Association. The vision of the National Summer Learning Association is that every child, regardless of zip code, grows and thrives every summer. The National Learning Association offers abundant resources to assess existing local opportunities for summer learning and plan and enact engaging programming. NSLA staff and expert field consultants are available to help schools and community partners plan, prepare staff, and measure impact. And it's on a budget everyone can afford. These services come at no cost to the consumer. A first step is to complete a summer landscape assessment to identify existing summer learning opportunities. Whom do they serve? Where are they located? What are the key activities? Are meals provided? Upon completion, a map that identifies gaps, redundancies, and opportunities becomes a baseline for subsequent planning. This year, the National Summer Learning Week will be observed from July 11th through the 15th. Wouldn't it be wonderful to join programs across the country to have students engaged in meaningful activities that the public and the media can appreciate and celebrate during this time? In the next 3 or so slides, I'll present some content sources for extended learning time programs that may be offered during the summer months and give you some ideas about the creative scheduling options to make them a reality. Remember, ESSER funds are available through summer 24. A national treasure that may not come first to mind as a resource when planning content for extended time for learning, but that nonetheless is a source that will greatly expand your sense of what is possible, is the Smithsonian Institute. The Smithsonian Institute was established by the estate of James Smithson, a British scientist who left his wealth to the United States to fulfill his dream of an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. The 19 museums, National Zoo, and education and research centers make it the largest museum network in the world. The Smithsonian Institute celebrated its 175th anniversary of operation in 2021. And while it's true that the museum campus is physically located in Washington, D.C., they are rapidly expanding their digital content and outreach to educators. During their inaugural Educator Day on Friday, September 17th, 2021, they sponsored sessions on innovative interdisciplinary lesson design, opportunities to cultivate skill development across content areas, and provided insights into how the Smithsonian tools and resources might enhance learning. This is where I learned that a team of educators from Tulsa Public Schools in Oklahoma created an open source curriculum to help us process the Tulsa race massacre of 1921 and the destruction of what came to be known as Black Wall Street. Decades of silence dishonored the deceased and suspended the healing process for the living. I greatly admire the convictions of the Tulsa Public School teachers and leaders who curated their historical artifacts and mined stories, and by bravely teaching their local hard history, involved students in advancing equity and social justice. You can visit the Smithsonian Open Access to download and share and reuse millions of images and access other interdisciplinary content for inclusion in existing and future lesson design. The images that you're seeing here on your screen are from 2 resources that were featured as part of Educator Day, one building from the American Women's History Initiative and the other involving the use of micro-observatory telescopes positioned at the Smithsonian's Fred Lawrence Whipple Observatory in Arizona. Visit the link above to learn more about their vast educator resources. We were tickled to notice a billboard advertising 4-H in Chicago. Initially, it came as a surprise, although in our research for this segment, we learned that Chicago hosted the National 4-H Club Congress for approximately 70 years at the Chicago Hilton. It was then that we were reminded of 4-H as one of America's foremost youth development initiatives. When we think of summer, we think of county and state fairs and 4-H exhibits, agriculture and natural resources, family and consumer sciences, and other youth development activities are offered by the Cooperative Extension, a community of more than 100 public universities across the nation that provide experiences for young people to learn by doing. 4-H activities address the head, heart, hands, and health of young people and their communities. Youth can choose their own adventure by selecting from projects such as photography, clothing and textiles, robotics, animal sciences. Draw Together began as an improvisational art class delivered to the internet from a handheld phone to support kids and parents during the COVID-19 school closures. Today, Wendy McNaughton, who also answers to Wendy Mac, broadcasts from a completely handmade studio. She's a New York Times bestselling illustrator who also holds a master in social work and blends visual art and creative expression with healing delivered with play-filled humor and lightheartedness. Today, kids and their families can register to have episodes delivered to their inbox weekly. Why not become one of the 10,000 schools across the country that she hopes to partner with to expand programming to settings with limited opportunities for high-quality expressive arts? Mo Willems, who is an American writer, animator, cartoonist, voice actor, children's book author, and Kennedy Center ambassador, has released episodes and promoted the work of other creatives. You may find it fun to explore these resources for students of all ages. And finally, don't forget Pete the Cat, a musically driven series about exploring one's world and trying new things while being smart, accepting, and optimistic. And really, why can't every day be Saturday? Historically, summer school has been treated as an intervention or remediation, and we need not continue to view summer school in this way. We can't imagine a single student who couldn't benefit from additional learning opportunities, but simply because you may now have additional resources through ESSER is not a reason to expand your current summer school offerings. Don't do what you've always done, think redesign. On a special note, before COVID, special populations were not always fully included in summer school offerings. So think about those who are in most need of these programs. Just because it's open and available does not mean that it's accessible to everyone. We can imagine that it's been a challenge, for example, to provide special education services without interruption. Compensatory services can come in many forms and must be individualized to the student's unique circumstances. Compensatory services can be provided during the regular school day, before or after school, over weekends, during school breaks, or can be delivered by external service providers. There's no reason to exclude diverse learners from extended time for learning offerings. Please visit our resources for a summer learning school self-assessment that can help you to distinguish your offerings in ways that enhance and extend the general curriculum while providing experiences that may not be feasible during the regular school year. There is a real pressure to recoup or recover what now is more than 20 months easily of learning, but the physical and emotional reserves of teachers and administrators are at an all-time low. Therefore, summer school staffing must certainly take this fact into account. How will you staff summer school? Market opportunities to district alumni, such as recent graduates or college students who are likely to be available during the summer. Near peers make wonderful role models and can certainly oversee an open gym, facilitate visual art activities, or supervise a technology lab. Nearby colleges, community colleges, or technical schools, parents who may not be working outside of the home, nonprofit organizations whose employees work second or third shifts could be invited in, and they may even be able to obtain a sub-certificate and report for assignments as early as noon in the day. Remember to provide a program orientation that includes a description of program logistics, such as where are the keys to the equipment closet, who to go to, a staff referral list for various reasons, role expectations, reporting structures, student attendance and record keeping, time and effort work logs, etc. And also provide training in terms of the cultural aspects of school life that you hope to have positively reinforced by extended learning time program staff. If the experience is a positive one for volunteers, staff, and students, imagine the positive communication about the school that will result, as well as residual benefits, such as volunteers committing to work toward careers in education or youth development. Keep in mind that volunteers do not need to be in person. Consider the many professionals who've migrated to work from home assignments. It's simple and easy to schedule a read aloud guest utilizing work from home talent and a Zoom connection. Availability and access to almost anyone and anything has expanded because of the flexibility that technology now provides. So help students read the world by inviting virtual guests into the classroom. In this next section, Era will help us to appreciate the many ways that we can maximize the home-school relationship. Era?
During pandemic shutdowns, the home-to-school connection grew. We need to capitalize on this partnership moving forward. According to the National Association for Family, School, and Community, family engagement is continuous across a child's life from pre-K through high school. Effective family engagement cuts across and reinforces learning in multiple settings. Engaging families in their students' learning does not mean that they must come to school. It means providing families with the resources that they need in order to continue learning at home. These resources may be instructional materials, or it may mean teaching caregivers learning strategies. Informal social interactions outside of the classroom may be an important factor in improving academic engagement and achievement. Working with families and strengthening family engagement can also help support the social emotional learning and executive functions of students. Schools will be more successful when promoting positive family engagement when they simply ask and help families to support students by doing things like establishing healthy work habits rather than focusing on academic content, providing a sense of routines which will reduce family anxiety. This slide is an illustration of support that families can use to help promote lifelong skills of listening and communicating. These images can be found on napkins available for purchase at local grocery stores. What child wouldn't love to get the napkin with the princess image in the upper left-hand corner? They would love following the instructions that say, "You get to make the rules." Through play, families can support the development of real-world life skills that students will draw upon as productive members of communities and society. Family engagement is essential in promoting healthy physical, cognitive, and social emotional development, along with academic achievement of children and youth from pre-K to high school. Research shows that when families are meaningfully and continuously engaged in their child's learning and development, they can positively impact their child's health, development, academic, and well-being outcomes into adulthood. Strong family engagement happens when families have a primary and meaningful role in all decision-making that impacts every young person and their families. Meaningful family engagement is about improving outcomes for all youth and families and happens at the system level and at the service level. At the system level, family engagement is evident when families routinely engage as equal partners with state and local leaders in planning, designing, and evaluating services, programs, and policies that impact the lives of children, youth, and families served. Family engagement also happens at the individual service level, where agency partners and a single family collaborate in making decisions that address their child's unique strengths and needs and considers the family's ideas of success. Meaningful family engagement requires that state and local leaders model and champion family partnerships anchored by mutual respect, shared authority, two-way communication, and a commitment to a common vision and shared goals to improve outcomes for every young person and their family. When schools partner with parents, they create a team that is focused on the same goals. The team approach creates success, both academic and social emotional success for all. A Chalkbeat report that we have included in our Module 4 resources offers some wonderful suggestions for engaging families. Creating working partnerships with families can lead to positive changes and opportunities. But remember, when you ask families for input, it is your responsibility to communicate the findings from the sources of family feedback you gather. Parents may not continue to respond if they do not see their ideas acted upon. They need to see evidence that their ideas are in use. When they do, they will become advocates who encourage their peer parents to also respond and engage. Now I'm going to send it over to Allison, who will continue to share in our next section.
Especially in the waning days of the more than 2 years in a pandemic, it is important to remember that any change, addition, or innovation in current programming requires support for all adults involved. We are going to quickly review some supports we've provided in the past to support the socio-emotional health of all adults in your community, as implementation must be supported to be successful. The Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, known as CASEL, developed this circle around SEL more than 15 years ago and recently updated their framework to acknowledge the exterior circles and incorporate school-wide policies and practices, family and community partnerships, as shown here. Social and emotional learning enhances students' capacity to integrate skills, attributes, and behaviors to deal effectively and ethically with daily tasks and challenges. Like many similar frameworks, CASEL's integrated framework promotes intrapersonal and interpersonal and cognitive competence. All adults need support during the pandemic. Teachers, partners, lunchroom staff, parents, tutors, and instructional aides are included in these adults that need these universal supports. In March 2020, we never imagined that we would be in calendar year 3 of the pandemic. When you are dealing with this level of prolonged, unpredictable stress, it is critical to reassure all adults. While we are confident in the benefits of extended learning time, we are well aware of the crisis, decision, and compassion fatigue that our teachers may be experiencing. This should motivate us to focus on the SEL competencies that are necessary to keep us healthy during these trying times. The learning day needs to continue. Extending the learning day while being conscious of the learning needs of adults is critical to our success. On the next slide, you will be reminded that in the previous COVID-19 toolkit modules, we utilized the CASEL framework and competencies to develop a list of corresponding skills that can be taught, practiced, and observed in adults. We have made this tool available in this toolkit as well as a springboard for teacher assessment and planning purposes. Once teachers identify areas of strength and need lie for students and for the return to school, they can accurately plan for student needs. Additionally, we have included a tool from CASEL that can be used as a student or adult self-assessment for these purposes as well. If you are working with students, all of these skills apply. You can see these corresponding skills for students have been aligned both to CASEL competencies and the performance descriptors from the ISB SEL standards in a summary tool for grades K to 5 and 6 to 12. Keep in mind, students are someplace along a continuum, but do not live in mastery of particular proficiency. This may lead to feelings of frustration among teachers and parents. Situational and contextual factors influence the application of these life skills and their proficient use. Students will need to practice these skills in a variety of settings to continue to grow in these areas. Now I will pass it back to Linda Shea for concluding thoughts.
Thank you, Allison. And let's bring this module across the finish line by entering into our closing comments. Isn't it time to replace the familiar with the possible? Zaretta Hammond encourages us all to engage in the possibility of things being different in schools and classrooms. As you've learned or been reminded of today, empirical evidence supports the adoption of certain practices over others. Look to the list on the left for examples. Targeted supports for families, exposing all students to grade level content, consistent and recurring opportunities for teacher collaboration, high dosage tutoring, extended time for learning, school-wide systems for identifying students most severely impacted by COVID-19. To get there, we may have to engage in the practice of selective abandonment, and we can look to the list on the right for those examples. Don't hesitate to retire the things that we do because we've always done them this way. They can no longer be supported by sound evidence or logic. Finally, our closing thoughts. Progress can be scary, but progress is good. Can you imagine living with a rotary phone? A computer dot matrix printer? Cars designed with V8 engines that rely only on fossil fuel? Are you willing to give up Amazon Prime, DoorDash? If you answered no to most or all of the questions we posed, then you're ready to take your school into the future. Best wishes as you undertake the ambitious task of extended time for learning and increasing opportunities to learn for all students in your care. Thank you.